Hey, everybody, and welcome to another show of Mindfulness with the dollar signs with Mark Bianchi. Um, Today's show is about common questions that I've received for years actually, but questions that I've received most recently regarding, our relationship with our finances, our relationship with our money, and our behaviors and all that kind of stuff that I talk about all the time. So today we are talking about those viewer questions, and I hope to answer them as in depth as I can. So welcome to the show. And we're here every second Wednesday, every other Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And glad you're here to join us. So with that, let's get started with question number one. So this is actually a pretty common question, if not, I'd say an overall common scenario that you find. And we all know that, I'm going to preempt all of these questions and all of these answers with full realization, as we all know, that 2020 has been the year from hell, of course, and it goes without saying, and we're all aware of that. And you can be the best person at following all of these rules, and life can have dealt you a bad hand this year. That just is the way it is, and that's nothing to be ashamed of, or to hang your head in shame about. It is just the way this year has been. And so what I'm getting at is that you can do all the right things and bad things can still happen. It just is the way this year has been. And it's just an example that as well as you can prepare, things can still happen. But I think that the overwhelming message in my preempt here is that you hedge your bets by being as prepared as possible. It doesn't mean that life can't still become difficult or throw difficulties at you. But yeah, I would just say that any advice that that anybody in any type of financial field gives you should be taken as these are the best practices. This hedges your bet. It's never a certainty that, hey, I did A, B, C, D, and E, and this still happened. I still got laid off. There's things that are in our control, and there's things that are out of our control. And I think I've said this on most of my shows, is the best thing we can do in life, really, or when it comes to money or any other thing in life, is just try to control what we can control and let go of the rest. So with that said, let's get to question number one. So very, very common question I get is, I can't seem to save any money at all. What do you recommend I do to get to the point where I'm saving? So very common scenario, especially in today's age. I would say that don't dig in too deep right away. Sit back and look at like everything that is happening in your financial life, for instance, and everything as it relates to money. So look at, sit down and start with baby steps. I would say start with baby steps and look at first of all, what sources of income do you have? Okay, is any of that negotiable? Can it be increased? Is there a way to get a promotion or anything like that? I would say, or up your skills to make you more marketable. Is there something you can do to look at ways to increase your income? So that's one aspect that I would look at. The second aspect, which is just as important, if not, in my opinion, it's actually much more important than your income. And that is, where does the money that you're making actually go? And you can call that your expenses. So thinking in accounting terms, your income is your income, and your daily expenses, in your life, those things that you hopefully try to budget for a little bit, those you would call your expenses. And anything that's left over is your net profit. So thinking of your family like a small business is a good place to start. So I've always said this, that it's more important than making the big money is watching where it goes. And the reason I say that is because we've all known people who make 100,000, 200,000, 400,000 a year who will tell you they can't live on one penny less than that. You know, they need every penny of that to be happy, to make it. And, you know, I take a little bit of issue with that. You have adjusted your lifestyle to fit your income rather than adjusting where your money goes to what your actual income is, which is the smarter way to look at it. So there is a human tendency that we all fall under to go through and adjust your living expenses to whatever it is you're making. But if you think about it, there's people out there living, okay, on 50,000 a year. So the bottom line here is it can be done. So, you know, when I hear somebody say like, oh, you know, I need $250,000 a year to survive. I need $500,000 a year as a couple to survive. Do you really? I wouldn't call that surviving. I would call that you like your luxury items. That's what I would call that. Because there are people making it on much, much, much less than that. So it can be done. So the point I'm getting at is it's all flexible. And the more important advice that I would give somebody who's asking me, like, how can I get started saving? I can't seem to get started saving. The number one thing before I would do anything tangible or concrete is I would look at what my behavior and what my thinking is about money. How do you view money? Do you think that, do you have $8,000 extra dollars in your pocket, and do you blow 7,999 of that before you've even earned it? So my question is, you know, more important than how much is coming in, look at how it's going out, okay? Because that's actually the bigger factor, believe it or not. There are people who make $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 who do an excellent job at managing their expenses, who have enormous 401ks. So it can be done. It's all a matter of what's your priority. Is your priority driving a 2019 car that you're leasing? Or is your priority contributing to a 401k? So one day you'll be able to have an enjoyable retirement and not be a slave to the system, not be a slave to banks, not be a slave to debtors. That's the ultimate goal. That's what we call financial freedom. And it's hard to get to complete, you know, financial freedom. It's hard. It's a challenge. But you can start with baby steps. And my whole point in answering this question would be, you know, how do I get to the point where I'm saving? I would say it starts with those baby steps, those little goals. So let's say, you know, you're sitting down, you're analyzing where all your money's going. So you're either doing it on the computer or you're putting it up in a little notebook, and you're writing down in the column your income, and you're writing down on a monthly basis where all your money is going in a month's time. And so if you find that, you know, and look at those things where your money is going. So, and really truthfully ask yourself, is this a need or is this a want? Is this something that I absolutely need? You know, like I'm paying for my children's education, okay, in college. That's necessary. That's a good thing. You know, you got to get your kids educated. They've got to be educated. I mean, it really does benefit to have that education. So that's like a good debt. You know, that's something that is a need. Do I need the $4 latte every day? No. Do I need to drive a 2019 brand new car? No. Because if you didn't have that brand new 2019 car with a car payment, and you had an older car which was paid off, you could take that money that you're using for that lease or for that car payment, and you could invest that either in your company's 401k or on your own. You could do something with that, and so it's a matter of breaking it all down. And I'm not anti enjoying life. I'm not saying that in the least, okay? We work hard for our money, we want to enjoy it, but we also have to think about someday you're not going to want to work anymore. You're going to be 70 years old, you're going to be 75 years old. You're going to get to a point where you say, I've done this for 45 years now, and it's time to kick back and enjoy my hobbies, enjoy my grandchildren, enjoy a little bit of traveling. You're going to get to that point. And if you've just resigned yourself to the I'm going to have to work until I'm 90 crowd, then you're choosing to think that way rather than addressing the behaviors that got you into that thinking mode. So I'm saying the answer to that question is start with baby steps. Look at where every dollar is going. Look at what's coming in and look at what's going out on a monthly basis, and differentiate between true needs and true wants. Okay, and if you do that, you're going to get to a better place. Take that money then that you can squeeze out of that monthly income and put it toward talk to a financial advisor and find out what the best places are to put that money for growth over the long haul. That's what you want to do. You want to think over the long haul. Okay, that's pretty much wraps up question number one. Question number two. I didn't do a great job saving earlier in my career, and I'm 50 now. So this person who asked this happened to be 50. Okay, so can I make up for lost time? That's the question. Can you make up for lost time? It's a little more challenging, but getting started at any point in your life is better than never getting started. You can definitely make up for lost time. However, it brings me back to something that I have alluded to in previous shows, and that is that the earlier that you get started, absolutely the better, because it's not as cramping to your lifestyle. If you save, let's say, 5% of your income starting at age 23 when you get your first job, and you just decide, I am going to live on 95% of my income. I'm going to make it work. And that other 5% that goes into an IRA, that goes into a private investment account that's not tax deferred, or it goes to my employer's 401k. But it's about, if you're doing it at if you're starting at a much, much younger age, or even in your 30s, it's not as daunting. Okay, because if you're trying to make up for lost time and you're starting it later in life, you have to start saving a bigger chunk to catch up. It's just logical, and even that is still hard. But but the point is that having some sort of a nest egg is always going to be better than having no nest egg. That's obvious. That's a no-brainer. So I would say, to Google's our friend, Google the performance of the stock market, for instance, over, usually with graphs, you can put in, for all time, you can put in 10 years, you can put in sometimes 20 years, 30 years, depending on what website you go to look at a graph. And just look at the stock market, or let's say the S&P 500. Or the Dow. Look at it over a 10, 20, or 30 or lifetime of the market performance graph. And you will see that it is like this for years and years and years and years. And even though it temporarily has those ups and downs, along the way, you can see, like if you did a trend line, that it is going in an upward direction. It's a 45-degree angle, basically, okay? Possibly better. And so you will see that the dollar cost averaging and doing the investing over time does have its benefits, and that's what you talk to your financial advisor about. And get into a program as young as possible. But can you make up for lost time? Yes, absolutely. But it's a little bit harder, and you have to make some real sacrifices then. Like that would be like, I would say like real hardcore look at what you can cut out as far as expenses, and vacations, that's another one, and if you do take a vacation, can you do a staycation? I don't know. There's vacations that are cheaper than other vacations, so I know we all need our vacations and we all enjoy that, but and we need that. We do. We need to decompress and all that, of course. I'm by no means have I ever advocated for, not enjoying life at all. But the thing is, it doesn't require huge amounts of money being spent always to enjoy life. You can also find satisfaction in the things that don't cost a lot of money. It is possible. There are things to do. There are hobbies, that don't require a lot of money. There are staycations, like I said. There are ways to travel where it's a little bit cheaper. You figure out maybe stay with family. I don't know. But you can get creative, and you don't have to stay in the most expensive hotel. You don't have to stay in the most expensive bed and breakfast, whatever your thing is that you enjoy. Um, and I know we need vacations, but I'm getting a little bit off the subject there. But start as early as you can. That's the number one thing, is start as early as you can. And it doesn't have to be an enormous amount when you start early. But the secret is that if you are 50, 55, and you're just getting started saving, you're probably not going to, if you do retire at 65, that you're probably not going to retire with a ton of a retirement. But you would have something. It's better to get started at some point than never to get started. That would be my advice to you. Okay, and then question number 3. This is almost a little on the philosophical side, which I do enjoy at times, getting a little philosophical. Okay, so Mark, why do you think younger generations, I guess we're talking about, millennials, what is it, XYZs, Ys and Zs, what are they called? People born after, 1980, 1990. Those born after 1980 or so, why do you think they view money and saving money so differently from the greatest generation? Oh, that would be like those people that would be around 100 if they're still around. And the silent generation. I think that's the people right after the greatest generation. I think those are the people born in the 30s and the 40s are called the silent generation. Yes, so there are great disparities in how those generations viewed money versus how current generations view money. Very, very, very different. I don't know what happened, but somewhere along the line, I would pinpoint it to, since I was born in the early 60s, I would say somewhere in the early 80s, materialism really became huge. Call it conspicuous consumption. That's a term I always love. Conspicuous consumption is when you live in an area and you don't know the people that live there maybe very, very, very well, like it's not a small town, maybe it's a city atmosphere or whatever. And in order to give the illusion of wealth, being conspicuous consumption, you drive the fancy car, you live in the fancy house, you wear the fancy clothes, you wear the designer labels. Conspicuous consumption. It's letting everybody else know that you've arrived, whether it's true or not, whether you're financing it to the hilt or whether you actually have the money to buy those things. It's conspicuous consumption is about making sure everybody out there knows that you've arrived. A little bit of a foolish endeavor, in my opinion. I've never been into that. And it really, who are you fooling? Really, who are you fooling in the long run? But something happened around the early 80s, I believe that materialism and things became more important than money. And the illusion of wealth became much more important than money. Those earlier generations, those people that are probably, many of them have passed, but those people that would be like in their 90s or 100 now, and even the next generation after them, those that would be in their 70s and their 80s, they came off of the Depression, the Great Depression, and slightly after the Great Depression, where it was still fresh in people's minds. The soup lines, the soup kitchens, people being unemployed, huge disparities in money, huge, worse than today, I think probably. I'm not sure about that, but yeah. But those people, because they went through those super hard times, they became almost like what I would say a little bit obsessed with the cash and the money, and they learned how to live on less. Like I know my parents' generation and my parents, the friends that they had and stuff like that, and my relatives, like if you couldn't afford to buy it with cash, you didn't buy it. Um, so in a lot of ways, a lot of that rubbed off on me. It's the way I am, for the most part. I really think about taking on debt. I really think hard and deep about taking on debt. I think we all should do that. But there is definitely a huge difference. And I think that, post the early 1980s, we all, I think that the influence of the media, the influence of like reality TV, which really honestly is not reality, let's face it. I mean, when you see how some of these people are living on these reality TV shows, that's not Joe and Mary from Kansas living like that, or Alabama or Connecticut. I mean, these are people who are wealthy. Okay, it's not really reality. It's real in that, it's not scripted necessarily. And so in that sense, it's a reality. But it's not really the reality that every other person out there is living in the daily life. But because we've been so bombarded, with the opulence out there, and advertisers and marketers telling you that, you're just nobody unless you're driving this car. You're just nobody unless your house looks like this, has this type of design. And that really, I think, got ingrained into people's heads after the 1980s. I think prior to that, it was more about, living within your means, and I'm sure people still got into debt back then, but I don't think it was as rampant as it is today. I think we started to own this mindset of, well, hey, if they can do it on TV, if that family can do it on TV and they can live like that, well, why don't I deserve that too? And while it's good to have healthy self-esteem, and think that you deserve to be prosperous, you absolutely do. We all do. You all deserve to have the best life possible. We all do. But it's also important to balance that with your actual real life situation and say like, hey, well, I have not quite really arrived yet. So that whole, that's where I have issues with this whole fake it till you make it mentality. No, you might be faking it and all you're really making is a whole lot of debt. Okay. Some people who fake it will make it. Okay. But, if you're a brand new realtor, do you need to go out and get a 2019 Lexus? I can honestly say that if a realtor pulled up to my house in a 2019 or a 2017 Accord that was well maintained and was clean, I would not feel any differently about that realtor than if they pulled up in a Mercedes or a Lexus. So do you need to fake it until you make it? I don't know. I think there's walking a fine line. I think you make it a little bit, and then you can fake it a little bit, then you make it a little bit more, but you make it happen before you fake it. I think that mentality is kind of the downfall of what brings so many people into debt. I really do. That's my personal opinion. Anyway, so that's where I think it's at. I think the older generations just had They were just more conscious of that, I think, because they went through harder times. And I think you might find coming out of this year where some people who didn't pay a lot of attention to it found themselves in a real pickle and maybe learned the lesson of saving better or not splurging, you know, or being a little more conscious of the splurging. I think you might find that after this year, that much like the Great Depression, that people learned, you know, that, you know, hey, I maybe I need to rein it back a little bit. And as I always say, you know, it's not just to blame. There's no blame here, because things happen, and this has been a bad year. It really has. But I do think there's a possibility that at least some people are going to come out of this year thinking that, wow, this year really caught me off guard. I maybe need to be a little bit more prepared going forward. I think that you might find that happening. Okie doke. So let's see. We've got a total of 6 questions, and I've gotten through 3. That works out pretty well for an hour, I think. So the number 4 question is, this is really, really common. This is also philosophical, and I understand where this person's coming from. Does having money make people happy? I would say absolutely. In and of itself, money alone is not going to make you happy. All heard that saying a million times, money doesn't make you happy. And it's true, money does not make you happy. But what money does and what it can do when you have a healthy respect for it and you're not obsessing about money being the end goal. Money is part of the process as you go along life. You know, you need it to live. You do. In our society, you need it to live. What having money can do for you, though, where it lends itself indirectly, I would say money does not, the way I would clarify this answer, I think the perfect answer is money does not directly make you happy. If you're a miserable person and you win the lotto tomorrow for $5 million, okay, you're not automatically a happy person. You have to address what is going on inside your head, inside your psyche that's making you unhappy, okay? Because that money alone is not going to make you happy. We all know people who have no money that are beaming with happiness and just have a joyful outlook toward life. And we all know people that have a ton of money who are downright miserable people to deal with, to be around, or whatever. So money does not directly make you happy. However, I do believe that having some money from a security standpoint lends itself to giving you some sense of financial independence, with which will, in and as a result, free you from a lot of the pressing worries and frustrations that come along with not having money. So if that makes sense, so the effects of having the money and what they can do to other aspects of your life can take some of the stressful burdens in some areas of your life away from you. Will that alone in and of itself make you a happy person? No, but it can help to ease some of that extra burden, it can ease some of that financial burden in your life if you have a nest egg. It will definitely lend itself toward de-stressing certain areas of your life, which can indirectly lead you to be a little bit happier. Because let's face it, you know, the more stress-free you can become, one would logically think, well, the happier you could become, you know? So, yeah, so that would be my answer. It doesn't directly make you happy, but it can indirectly lead to other good things as a domino effect in your life that could lend itself to making you a little bit happier. So number five. Money can be considered one aspect of success, but what other measures of success do you think are equally important? Now we're getting very philosophical today, it seems. I would say that money is definitely should not be the way you measure your success in life. Money's a reward, um, but hopefully you're getting that reward for doing something you're actually enjoying. Because if you're, I think the number one aspect of success is to feel a sense of purpose. Um, that could be just me. It could be, maybe there's a handful of us that feel like that. But to me, success, true success, is not only about money. Money should not be the end game. If money is the end game, it doesn't lend itself toward making you happy. Purpose in life, um, should to me weighs a whole lot more. And feeling like you have a calling to do what you're doing, feeling like what you're doing is feeding your soul. Um, all of those things to me are much more important than money. I think that um, we're geared because, getting back to the other question that I answered, we're geared because of the media. We're geared because of the focus on things that are obvious status symbols. There's a word you don't hear a lot anymore. Status symbols, what we used to call it. There's also a book, I think it's called The $30,000 Millionaire or something like that. I forget. But I think I haven't read the book, but I think it talks about people and the money and the credit, using credit to give the illusion of wealth and all that kind of stuff. But money is only one aspect of the success, without a doubt. Purpose, feeling that sense of fulfillment. Like, I think I talked about this maybe on last week's show or two shows ago, about how even in the most mundane job, I think it's important for our sanity, for our sense of well-being, to find the aspects of that job that feed your soul. In other words, and what I mean by feed your soul is what are the aspects of that job that make you happy? So you found yourself in an all numbers job, but your true personality is you're a people person. Okay, so that can sound like that's quite a dilemma that person A has found themselves in. Well, there's things that you can do. There are, look deep within that job and that career and try to expand it out to see, what can you do for your customer? What can you, when you interact with a customer or a client, what can you do that feeds your need for people interaction in that job? There's almost always, a way to find something about a job or a career that you love. Find the aspects of it that you love. Let's say, for instance, you're a closet teacher. And what I mean by that is, you're not working as a teacher, but you really love the idea of teaching people. I'm kind of a little bit like that, and I've been like that in previous roles that when I was in corporate America. What I would say is, look for the avenues within that role that you have where you're able to instruct somebody or teach somebody a new task, or teach somebody a new way of looking at something. Even the most math-oriented or number-oriented job or a tech-oriented job has usually some sort of people aspect to it. It may be teaching a coworker a new task, but find those avenues that make you happier, and sell that skill to your boss, to your peers, or whoever, because that's one way to get that feedback and that recognition for something that you are, that you excel at. And somebody may not even know that you have that skill, but because you commonly teach people or educate people on tasks and bring them up to speed on things, and that feeds your teaching drive, your drive to want to teach. And even though you're working a tech job or something like that, or an accounting type of a job, teaching somebody else that you work with that task, I mean, that can feed your soul. So money is not the only thing. Purpose is huge, in my opinion. So let's get to the last question here. So what do you think it really takes to become financially independent? Wow. So that I should almost say, well, all of the above, but what do I think it really takes to become financially independent? I think I touched on that in the first question, but I would say, like, looking at the big picture, okay? Being able to take a step back, and almost look at yourself objectively, like you're looking at yourself from up above, from a 30,000-foot level, looking at yourself, looking at your life, looking at the big picture of your life, in conjunction with being able to break it all apart and looking at all the details of your life too. So look at the big picture and then look at the details. Look at both of how you're interacting with money. That would be your number one starting place. So what do I think it really takes? So there's many aspects, and I hit on a few of them, but I would say at as young of an age as possible, decide, what do you like to do? Some of us go through life and we're still searching for that. But if you don't know exactly as a career what you want to do, break it apart into skill sets that you have, that you enjoy, like the teaching thing I just talked about. You may not end up being a teacher, but what kind of a role could you have where you have, client interaction, where you have, teamwork, collaboration, where those focus on, if you haven't decided on a specific career, focus on your skill sets. And start with the baby steps. Like a lot of this, I always say, start with the baby steps. So get yourself into a career or a job where you can learn and you can grow, and hopefully the money comes into play along with that. So that's the income portion. But I will, like I've always maintained, I think the income portion is this big, and I think the expense management portion is this big. So I actually think the expense management portion is much more critical of a factor in achieving any type of financial independence than only the income. You can make it work on whatever the income is, within reason. I would say, then break it apart where your money is going on a daily basis, on a monthly basis, and getting back to that, separating the needs from the wants. I think the problem perhaps in our society very often is we want like a magic bullet answer. We want that silver bullet answer. We want to just, we want to be fit, and we want to be fit and muscular in 2 days. We want to drop 10 pounds and we want it in 2 days. We want to be financially successful and we want it in 2 days. But in life, it doesn't work like that. It really doesn't. It takes perseverance, and it takes time, and it takes some planning like it says right there in the header, in the background. Perseverance and planning, and having that good plan. And that plan starts with breaking it apart and looking at your individual situation, not comparing yourself to somebody who's already arrived, because you don't know what that person went through to get to that point. I mean, maybe they're a very rich doctor, but did they live their life in their late 20s and their early 30s, like paying off a ton of medical school debt? You don't know where people started out and why they ended up where they are. You don't really know somebody's story just looking at them. So let's never assume we know somebody else's story. That's crucial, I think. Compare yourself to yourself. Don't be hung up on the comparisons. So look at compare yourself to the achievement of the goals that you want in your life. And if being more financially secure one day is your goal, sit back and realize before you do anything, before you put any kind of a plan into place, realize that it's going to take some planning and some steps to get there. Okay, realize that it's not an overnight thing. Are there people who have, let's say, invented something and become rich almost overnight? Yes, of course. There's always exceptions to every rule. But is that the norm? Is that the rule, or is that the exception? I would argue that it's more the exception. Most of us don't become rich overnight. It takes a lot of hard work. And but like I said before, money should not be the only end game. Money should be a nice side effect of doing something that you love and doing something that you enjoy and something that also feeds your soul. It's not mutually exclusive. There's no rule that says we have to feed our soul and we have to live like the proverbial starving artist, or we have to be a greedy, money-grubbing person over here who's only looking out for money and making tons and tons and tons of money, and that's it. That's the only focus. So it doesn't have to be an either or. Those two things are not mutually exclusive. You can incorporate aspects of ambition and perseverance and planning and financial success with your other side of your altruistic nature of giving back, and compassion and empathy and being a nice person. Let's not forget that. It's okay. You can be a nice person and still be financially successful. There's also we love to put people into little labels and boxes, don't we? In our society, we just love to do that. You can't say that all people who have money are money-grubbing people who don't care at all about other people. You can't make a generalization like that. It's just not true. There are many people who have become very successful financially who give a lot back to society, to their employees, to whatever. Now, I'm not saying they're all like that, but you can't make a generalization. You can't stereotype. People can be, you can be whatever you choose to be. So you can be financially, you can work toward financial independence and also be a nice person. That is possible. It truly takes, though, to become financially independent. I got a little bit off the subject right there, a little bit on a tangent. What you need to really do is you really need to take that step back, look at your personal situation, compare yourself to your own goals. Don't compare yourself to what somebody else has, because you don't know their backstory ever. Okay, they could have inherited everything they have. Okay, and that's not going to happen with you because you don't have rich parents. So, don't compare yourself to other people. Compare yourself to yourself, and then come up with some sort of a plan. And it doesn't have to be, the Taj Mahal of plans. It can be just baby steps. Like, today I start brewing my own coffee and not going to a coffee shop anymore for my coffee. I'm starting with that tiny little baby step. Today I am going to pay $25 more a month on each one of my credit card payments, or $50 more a month on my credit card payments, and I'm going to use them half as much as I'm currently using them. So it doesn't have to be this huge dramatic step that you take. You're not going to get to the finish line in one day or 2 days. So realize that, and also realize that you have to make a little bit of a plan. You have to take those baby steps. So starting with those baby steps, make those small changes, because I really honestly believe in that saying, Rome was not built in a day. You're not going to become financially successful or financially independent in a day. And I forget whether it was an article or a book out there, but it was something about the millionaire next door. And it was years ago. The title was something like that. I probably butchered that title, but it was about, it used to be 40, 50 years ago, like you said, it's like the Austin Powers movie, $1 million. Like, it was, because it was a big deal back then, but in the late 90s, that's not really You know, that's not like saying, you know, like nowadays you'd have to say $1 billion, you know, but back then $1 million was a lot of money because the average person was making $5, $6, $7,000 a year. So yeah, $1 million was a lot of money. But I think what the book was talking about is the millionaire next door, if that was the title, I'm not sure. But I think that what has happened is there are a surprising number of people who have become millionaires just from regular contributions to a 401k and flight attendants. I think there was a book or something about a flight attendant that was common flight, like it was common to find tenured flight attendants that had over $1 million in their 401ks. I'm not remembering it all correctly, but my point is that it's not about jumping through hoops and achieving all these spectacular things to get to that finish line of having a little bit of financial security. And I would say, like, if you're able to reach 65 and you've put aside $1 million, I mean, you're not living the lifestyles of the rich and famous if you stop working, but you know, you're also retiring with quite a bit more money than most people have. Let's face it, 78% of people are living paycheck to paycheck. If you're 64, 65, and you have $1 million in your investment accounts, you're doing pretty well. I mean, you know, you have a level of comfort that a lot of people don't have. So, you know, don't shoot to be like, you know, a billionaire, because how many of us are going to ever achieve that? You know, that's hard. I mean, that's to put it mildly. And also avoid the attitude of it isn't worth even trying because I'll never be a multi-millionaire. You know, you may not ever be a multi-millionaire, but you might be a millionaire or close to it. And that's going to buy you some freedom, some security. That's going to feel better than any new car you're driving. Trust me. That will feel better for you in the long run when you wake up one day and you're 64, 65 years old and you find like, oh my God, wow, I've amassed $1 million. I've amassed $800,000 in my 401k. Wow. You know, because I took advantage of it from an early age, you know, and you'll find like, you know, I mean, is that enough? It depends. It depends. And I'm never going to say a certain figure because I think a lot of people will tell you a certain figure you need to hit to be able to ever retire. But I think, honestly, to me, I think that number is individual. I think that you determine what number you need. And you determine that after talking to a financial advisor. This is what you'll be able to live on. This is what you'll be able to afford. What debt do you have? Do you have a house that's paid off plus $1 million? Or do you have $1 million and you still owe $300,000 on your house? Two completely different scenarios. So that's why you talk to a financial advisor about your specific situation and what's doable for you. But what I would say is, don't look at financial independence as one way or the other. You're either a billionaire or you're living paycheck to paycheck. You know, those are two extremes. On this end, paycheck to paycheck. On this end, multi-billionaire. Okay, there's a whole lot of things in between. There's a whole lot of levels to achieve in between those two extremes. So, you know, shoot for what's a reasonable goal for you and your situation. And some financial security is better than no financial security. Okay, don't have that self-defeating attitude of, well, you know, I'll never be a multi-billionaire, so why should I bother saving? Well, believe me, even those billionaires, unless they inherited huge, large amounts of money, we've all read the success stories of people that started out, you know, waiting tables or, you know, doing some other, you know, daily grind type of a job, and then got a break. You know, they pursued, they persevered, they networked, they got, you know, to a point where they became a whole lot more, but it wasn't overnight. You know, we all know those stories, so it can be done. But set realistic goals for yourself is what I'm saying. And start with baby step goals and then work your way up to the bigger goals. And don't have that self-defeatist attitude that, oh, if I can't achieve $1 billion, or if I can't be worth $10 million or $50 million, then it's just not worth it. But it is worth it, because you'll find one day that what you have put aside for your financial future and your security is better than having nothing put aside for it. And you can say, but we can live on love. That only goes so far. Sorry to tell you. But yeah, you need to live in the tangible world, and the tangible world says that you should have something put aside, especially by the time you get to a certain age. And make those sacrifices. Make those sacrifices if you have to. Whatever you have to do to get there. Barring of course horrible years like this, there are steps you can take to make all that stuff happen. And hopefully I've enlightened everybody with a little bit of those tidbits from me, Mindfulness with Mark Bianchi. We are on every second Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern Standard Time. And I hope you have enjoyed today's show. And I look forward to seeing you all 2 weeks from now. Thank you for joining. Have a good day. Bye-bye.